Welcome to Soul Group. This solution is all about finding your soul center and learning how to align it with the best version of yourself. Throughout this solution and all the others in this series, I am using four-letter words as a creative learning tool to help you remember and process these new concepts, ideas, principles, practices. Four-letter words will be used over and over again until you have an entire library of four-letter words that you can call on that help remember what it is that you're working towards becoming. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you like what you hear here, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. Let's begin. One of the things that I really believe in, one of the ideas that my core teachings are based on, is that we live in a media-driven world that sends messages to our egos all day long about who and what we should want to be. Now, when I use the term ego, I'm referring to that conscious part of self that we show the world, okay? These messages that we receive, these messages that come at our ego, encourage us to fear those things that we don't understand, including other people. These messages encourage us to judge one another, and these messages encourage us to compare ourselves to each other, no matter how different our circumstances might be. Now, I have a few comments on these messages before we get into the larger lesson, and that first one is no one gets to tell you who you are but you. Okay, that is an important decision that is for you and you alone. Second, fear and judgment will never bring growth or understanding, because I believe the minute we begin to judge or compare ourselves to others, our capacity for love and grace immediately begins to diminish. And third, there is no real comparison between you and another person. Any attempt to compare yourself to another person is automatically a false comparison. Even identical twins, growing up in the same home, having seemingly similar, if not almost the same experiences, still do not actually process the world the same way. Okay, so even twins exposed to the same things do not have the same attitudes, beliefs, behaviors. So any comparison is automatically false. So if our experiences are not identical, then comparisons are judgment. And then if you think about what I said a moment ago about judgment bringing automatic diminishing to our ability to share love and grace with ourselves and others. And the truth is, the only person you should ever compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. Let me say that again. I stumbled over those words. The only person you should ever compare yourself to is the person that you were yesterday. So what do I mean by this message sending world and the way the ego gets triggered by all of this? Well, in this media-driven message sending world, we are constantly asked to compare ourselves. We're constantly told we're not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, rich enough, whatever. Fill in that blank, right? And that simply isn't true. So how does this relate to the best version of ourselves? Well, I'm saying that in this message sending world, it makes it really difficult to figure out who we actually are, right? It makes it really difficult to claim our true identity and our spiritual rather than material selves. Over time, it becomes increasingly difficult to reject these labels or these names that people give us. Remember that, not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough. You get what I'm talking about, right? And this is where the soul work comes in. Soul work. These are our first two four-letter words, okay? This four-letter word solution is asking you to do a couple of things. We start by becoming incredibly curious about ourselves, uniquely curious about ourselves, so that we can determine who we actually are. In order to do this, we need to recognize that these messages most of the time are lies that our mind is telling us. Okay, these are lies. These lies are what we call cognitive distortion, and they are loud. Another four-letter word. These messages from social media are loud, which makes them hard to ignore. It makes them hard to override or rewrite in our brains. And so this is where, if we become uniquely curious about ourselves, when these lies pop up, we can train our brains to go, hey, wait a minute, I don't think that's true. I believe I am smart enough, pretty enough, strong enough. You get what I'm saying here, right? So all too often, though, our minds are interpreting and reacting to these ego-based messages. And anytime we react rather than respond to information, we are prone to overreacting. Now, it's important to recognize the difference. See, reaction is emotion-based, where responding is thoughtful and often involves deliberate action. So when we can learn to respond rather than react to our life, we tend to have more productive outcomes. You want to become the best version or a better version of you, you need to know who you are. Okay, and recognizing who we are involves becoming uniquely curious. Now, I'd like to point out here, when I said before about judgment and comparison diminishing our ability for grace and love, I'd like to point that out, that involves ourselves as well. See, this best version of self doesn't mean that we don't love who we are right here, right now. Self-love is wildly important for mental health, but it takes time and it takes honesty and it takes a willingness to get curious and do this soul work. So this practice is all about paying attention and learning to recognize who you actually are in your life. If this sounds like you or this sounds interesting to you, I can teach you how to control the content and the quality of your thoughts. You can learn how to change the way you think if you can learn to pause before you respond. So what have we learned today? Getting to the best version of ourselves requires soul work, and soul work requires becoming uniquely curious about yourself and becoming aware of the lies your mind is telling you. You can learn to silence the loud, or at least learn how to turn it down. Start to recognize when your self-talk, two more four-letter words, by the way, when this self-talk is untrue. That recognition, that awareness, that is the first step, another four-letter word, to becoming the best version of you. I am delighted that you have found this space. I hope that you continue to join into this community and find help in these solutions. I hope you decide to stay a while. And if you do, I respectfully request that you like, share, follow, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.